Did you know that the far north used to be a place of ancient paradise? Indeed, where we believed nothing but ice flourished. Hyperborea was its name. This utopia not only existed, but there's a strong possibility that the ancient civilizations from which mankind originated included the people. How did Hyperborea feel? The Hyperborean people are who? And above all, what became of them? In this new Digging History episode, we'll find out together. Greetings. What if there were times when the Arctic wasn't a frozen wasteland? What if there once was a society so highly developed that the Greeks referred to it as a paradise outside of the North Wind, concealed behind the endless sheets of ice? It was dubbed Hyperborea. This was a place where the sun never set, a place where people lived without illness or conflict, and winters never arrived. The Greeks did not consider it to be fantasy. These stories were written off as myth for decades. It was said that Hyperborea was a lyrical exaggeration from a society fixated on divine aspirations. The issue is that information from contemporary science suggests that the Arctic wasn't always icy. According to geological research, the poles were temperate during the Holocene warm periods. In other words, they were verdant, lush, and even livable. Let's investigate it. Was Hyperborea a hallucination or a warped recollection of a bygone era? Could the Greeks have kept Hyperborea in their mythologies if societies like Sumer and Egypt had kept pieces of Atlantis in theirs? You'd be curious to know this. Fertile areas are not the only thing suggested by the Hyperborea study. It also discusses beings that are unlike any other. Individuals who were tall, bright, and had a long lifespan. They also possessed technology that had the potential to harness consciousness itself. A people who lived in accordance with the laws of heaven rather than the rigors of existence. But what happened to them if they were real? Hyperborea wasn't just a fantasy to the Greeks. It was a reality of geography. Beyond Boreas, the god of the north wind, is what the name itself implies. This indicates that it was a place outside of the winter's ice blasts, north of Thrace. The trick is that the sun never sets in Hyperborea. Because of this, ancient poets like Pindar referred to it as a paradise where night itself seems to have been exiled. How could they have thought of it? We have a clue, thanks to modern science. Over the Arctic Circle, the sun doesn't really set for some months. For cultures in the Mediterranean, this must have sounded magical. However, the Greeks saw it as evidence that there were actual residents. People were extremely fortunate to have lived at what appeared to be the exact border between heaven and earth. However, this cutoff was unreachable. Friedrich Nietzsche, an ancient philosopher, famously stated that the road to the Hyperboreans cannot be found by land or by sea. It does appear lyrical at first glance. However, historians contend that a mystery was mirrored in his lines, particularly after historians discovered that although people could move north, something always prevented them from doing so. There were times when the mountains were insurmountable. At other times, the storm proved dangerous. However, tidbits of testimony indicated that some had arrived. Diodorus Siculus described a splendid island the size of Sicily that was situated far to the north and was home to enormous temples and lush meadows. He claimed that pilgrims went there in homage to Apollo, whose veneration was essential to the Hyperboreans. Consider it. Why explain geography so accurately if this is a myth? If it were merely an allegory, why insist on temples, ceremonies, and pilgrimages? It appeared that the Greek historians were aware of Hyperborea's existence. Why it was hidden was the question, not if it existed at all. Hyperborea was unique for reasons other than its topography. People are worth talking about. The Hyperboreans are described in ancient sources as tall, dazzling, and timeless. People who coexisted peacefully with the natural world. They were unaware of degradation, illness, or conflict. Greek poet from antiquity. According to Pindar, they lived their lives performing songs, dances, and sacrifices to the gods. This seems unreal to ears of today. How could they have such a simple, happy life? In actuality, however, they were not just happy northerners. Rather, They stood for a better way of life. That is, people who had not been corrupted prior to the fall. Hyperborea is more than just a myth, if this is accurate. Our forgotten beginning is Hyperborea. Let's take a moment to discuss the Hyperboreans. Who were these brilliant individuals that poets and historians could not stop talking about? The Hyperboreans were portrayed by ancient Greek authors as being unlike other people. Initially, Herodotus, a historian from ancient Greece, he characterized them as a dazzling race that resided in a place where the sun never set, beyond the north wind. What about Pindar? He described them as immortal, unaffected by illness or aging. They lived for centuries, in contrast to mortal men. Their lives were characterized by feasts, music, and holy rites that brought them into harmony with the spiritual. Regarding appearance, the Hyperboreans were described as tall, fair, and glowing. Indeed, they were so full of life. That's not all, though. Their lifespan was up to a millennium. Do you think that's possible? The question is raised by this. Are the mysteries of human longevity that science is only now rediscovering revealed by the Hyperboreans? The Hyperboreans' age is only one aspect of their mystery. Not alone did men revere these individuals, but the gods also adored them. Let me give you a reason to believe. According to Greek mythology, the god of light, music, and prophecy, Apollo, made a 19-year journey to Hyperborea. He was reported to have regenerated, feasted, and interacted with his chosen people during his visit. The Hyperboreans did not worship in terror, in contrast to those in other places. Rather, they engaged with the divine on an equal footing. Typically, Hyperboreans used maidens or swans to transport holy offerings to Delphi. This served as a link between their native Arctic region and Greece's religious center. Why would one of the main Olympian gods choose the companionship of this obscure northern people above the Greeks themselves, given Apollo's devotion, is a startling question. Do we know all there is to know about the Hyperboreans? Comparing ourselves to other old traditions may provide the answers we seek. The problem is that in ancient memory, the Hyperboreans are not unique. Bits and pieces of their history recur throughout Indo-European cultures. The Uttara Kuru, a northern land of luminous beings, is mentioned in Vedic scriptures. Asgard and the dazzling Aesir gods in the far north are described in the Norse sagas. The idea of a radiant race that is tall, wise, and long-lived is what ties these myths together. What if all of them are cultural artifacts that reference Hyperborea? The odds are alarming. Every Greek student was taught that Apollo, the deity of prophecy, music, and light, didn't spend the entire year in Delphi. Every winter, he departed for Hyperborea, his actual country in the north. Apollo found new life among the glowing people there. Consider this. Even the god of light, whose temple at Delphi helped to define Greek identity, derived his authority from a society outside of the north wind, rather than Olympus. These actual geographically based ceremonies imply that the Greeks were aware of a strong religion that existed much beyond their boundaries. Hyperborea, however, was more than just an old sect. According to Diodorus Siculus, there was an Apollo temple in Hyperborea that was bigger than anything Greece had ever seen. Diodorus Siculus discussed it in Bibliotheca Historica. According to him, the temple is spherical and moves in harmony with the stars. This mirrored what we would eventually discover at Stonehenge and even Egypt's magnificent sun temples. How might temples that appear to adhere to the same design principles be constructed by cultures that are thousands of miles apart? One explanation is that they had an instructor in common. Could that origin have been Hyperborea? The Greeks used to consult oracles because they were afraid of what lay ahead. However, it was thought that the oracle's site came from Hyperborean wisdom. Herodotus even asserted that the Dodona oracle, the most well-known, was initially imported from Hyperborea. This is when the exciting part begins. The Delphic oracle had a direct connection to Apollo's northern expeditions and influenced politics, colonization, and war. Delphi's sacred flame grew dimmer each winter as the god departed for Hyperborea, and prophecy blossomed once more when he arrived in the spring. This cycle revealed something more profound. Hyperborean contact maintained the prophecy itself. The gods became quiet in their absence. And it's possible that Greece wouldn't have seen the future without them. We are curious about this discovery. Did Hyperboreans simply exist as mythical northerners? Or were they the unnoticed mentors of classical Greece's religion itself? In addition to being thought of as the unique component of Greek religion, Hyperborea has been found to have unthinkable technology. Hyperborea was described in ancient books as more than just a cold wilderness. It was a luminous world driven by crystals. Tall quartz spires that pulsed with harmonic frequencies were a feature of their cities. Above all, they directed the inherent energy fields of the earth. These weren't just ornaments. Piezoelectric technology was perfected by the Hyperboreans. We are discussing the technology that produces power by applying pressure within enormous crystals. Imagine cities that are illuminated by vibrational resonance rather than fire. Additionally, the human body was tuned like a living instrument in this civilization by using sound and crystal harmonics to promote healing. Nothing resembled the negative side effects associated with taking conventional medications. The Arctic is still shrouded in mystery today. Magnetic anomalies are revealed via satellite measurements. If you examine more closely, you'll see places where compasses spin erratically and electromagnetic fluxes intensify well beyond what is expected of them. It is attributed by some scientists to moving poles. However, opposing researchers contend otherwise. What if the ice included traces of Hyperborean technology? What about the well-known machines of the North that balanced Earth's magnetic and stabilized the climate? These things are referred to be anomalies in the modern world. What if, however, these anomalies are the silent echoes of Hyperborea that continue to reverberate thousands of years after the fall? Strange auroras have been seen by explorers when there is no solar activity, as if the sky were reacting to something below. In the event that Hyperborea actually connected to the Earth's magnetic grid, the anomalies are the traces of a lost energy network, not only peculiarities of the geology. The freezing North might not be as dead as we believe, if that is the case. Maybe there is a dormant system within the ice that is just waiting to be found. The Hyperborean puzzle's striking resemblance to Atlantis is what makes it even more bizarre. According to legend, these civilizations constructed cities that were stabilized by Earth's magnetic field, powered by crystals, and lined up with energy lines. The Atlanteans employed fire from the Earth that was directed through crystalline formations in Plato's dialogues. Hyperboreans are described in ancient books as accomplishing the same thing, only more elegantly. According to some scholars, the two were actually twin outposts of the same global civilization rather than distinct entities. Atlantis' collapse due to flooding and freezing of Hyperborea through pole shifts might have been a single catastrophic event that was mythically depicted in a different way. If this is the case, the vanished technology and crystal grids found beneath the Arctic ice are parts of the same untold tale. An account of a time when people and the Earth coexisted together. Words were hardly essential in Hyperborea. Conversation took place mind to mind. Do you think that's possible? In this place, telepathy was a common language, rather than a superpower. According to Greek stories, the Hyperboreans were clear-headed, pure beings who didn't tell lies or act dishonestly. How can falsehoods flourish? Deception is impossible when your thoughts are audible. The startling thing is that current studies on quantum entanglement and brainwave synchronization indicate that such communication may not be fiction. Research indicates that emotions can be felt and minds can align over long distances. Was it possible that Hyperborea had mastered what science now refers to as psi phenomena? Imagine a society in which all intentions were clear and peace was upheld by consciousness rather than the law. What if their calm was a mental state rather than a cultural decision? This is not the end of it. The Hyperboreans believed that reality extended beyond the physical world. According to ancient customs, they are astral travelers that can transcend their bodies and travel both inside and beyond of Earth. Neither distance nor the rules of gravity applied to them. Consider Tibetan monks engaging in dream yoga, shamans who induced trances, or the Egyptian Ba soul that journeyed beyond death. Now consider a whole society that continuously maps the stars while possessing that skill. Perhaps the reason so many old maps have impossible precision is because their explorers journeyed astrally. For instance, the ice-covered shoreline of Antarctica. Did ships or mines create those maps? This merely demonstrates that what science rejects as hallucinations may have once served as a navigational aid. Prepare yourself for more if the out-of-body experience caught you off guard. The assertion that Hyperboreans communicated via telepathy is not the most extreme. The Hyperboreans had the ability to manipulate matter through thinking. According to some accounts, they created energy, moved stones, and even used awareness to heal wounds. Horrible? Perhaps. Psychokinesis experiments, however, have modest but reliable results, notwithstanding their controversy. Now contrast this with the inconceivable achievements of historic architecture. We witness hundreds of tons of monoliths. These were all raised without the use of contemporary cranes. What if the stones were so tightly fitted that there was no way for a blade to pass through them? Was this ancient knowledge derived from Hyperborean techniques? Hyperborea not only conquered tools, but they also mastered reality itself, if thinking could affect matter. It's possible that their temples were constructed using concentrated resonance rather than force. In ways we can hardly fathom now, they brought mind and matter into alignment. Beyond that, however, their cities were marvels. The Hyperborean cities weren't just haphazard stone formations, they were breathtaking. According to ancient Greek authors, the Hyperboreans oriented their temples in accordance with the motions of the stars. Doesn't that sound like an exaggeration? However, their towns served as astronomical calendars in addition to being places of residence. The description is consistent with other sacred geometries around the world when you consider the probabilities. For instance, Teotihuacan's layout reflects that of the Milky Way, and the pyramids of Giza line up with Orion. Is it possible that a single Hyperborean blueprint is being passed down to all of these disparate cultures? It becomes more fascinating. It was claimed that Hyperborea's architecture radiated an unearthly brightness. Energy-conducting crystalline stone was used to carve temples. Imagine whole cities that are shaped like tuning forks to align with the magnetic field of the Earth. And you may see traces of this in buildings that defy understanding when you look at current architecture. We are referring about the enormous foundation stones of Baalbek, the earthquake-resistant walls of Machu Picchu, or the 12,000-year-old aligned pillars of Göbekli Tepe. All of these websites display comparable geometry. However, Hyperborea's wonders go beyond their actual structure. Did you know that there were holy places in Hyperborea that served as world-to-world portals? Indeed, temples were purposefully positioned atop geomagnetic hotspots. In other words, the locations with the strongest Earth's magnetic energy. The ancients viewed them as gateways, whereas modern science may refer to them as oddities. The same tendency shows up throughout cultures. Examples include Tibetan monasteries on ley line crossings, Mesoamerican pyramids at magnetic nodes, and Delphi's oracle situated above a fissure. It raises the question of whether these striking similarities are remnants of Hyperborean wisdom that has been passed down through the ages. You might find it interesting to learn that the Hyperboreans have left behind more secrets than only architectural concepts. Regarding their spirituality, much can be said. How did Hyperborea's spiritual community function? This is where we should begin. According to Greek historians, Hyperborea was a place where days flowed into one another without any darkness, and where the sun never set. On the surface, this seems implausible. However, there are times in the extreme north when the sun never sets. This may have seemed like entering a heavenly realm to ancient explorers. The Hyperboreans, however, lived in more than just the midnight sun. They held it in high regard. Their celebrations were supposed to endure months. This was done in accordance with the cycles of the stars. According to some academics, their entire calendar was based on solar rhythms, fusing spirituality and astronomy. Imagine a world in which the living universe, rather than clocks, controlled time. Is this the reason why people thought Hyperboreans were closer to the gods? They might have been partners in the sun's vitality rather than worshippers. An absurd idea in and of itself. The idea is much more absurd. Did their longevity stem from their affinity for light? Furthermore, the Hyperboreans' perception of serenity is too fantastical. According to ancient sources, the Hyperboreans lived in a world free from violence, age, and illness. They were characterized as a peaceful people who had not been affected by the bloodshed that engulfed other civilizations. However, how is such a society possible? Maybe because of their sophisticated technology, scarcity was eradicated, eliminating the underlying causes of strife. Or maybe ego-driven competitiveness was subdued by their spiritual instruction. According to Greek legend, the Hyperboreans do more than just stay out of conflict. They actively promoted harmony, affecting neighboring countries. Where did they come from? Is this the reason Apollo, the god of prophecy and healing, was reputed to spend his winters with them? It sounds utopian to live in a society free from war. However, what if humanity has forgotten that it was once feasible, making it unthinkable? The Hyperboreans' remarkable lifetime is the most startling revelation about them. According to some reports, they never aged like humans do and lived for hundreds of years. Could the surroundings have been the only cause of this? It seems like a decent enough deal when you take into account the crystal energy, clean air, and ideal nutrition. Or was it their consciousness control? Were they able to slow down biological degradation as a result? Hyperborea might have been the living evidence of the ancient mystics' belief that thought itself could prolong life. According to texts, they are free from old age and disease. Their departures were hailed as conscious transitions rather than tragedies, and their deaths only occurred when they made the decision to do so. They welcomed death as a means of accessing higher planes rather than being afraid of it. What if aging, as we see it, is actually a sign of knowledge loss rather than a natural process? Hyperborea was not seen by the Greeks as a far-off fable. Rather, they thought it influenced their own society. They described the yearly delivery of holy offerings to Delphi, Greece's spiritual hub, from Hyperborea. As previously mentioned, it was rumored that Apollo himself would withdraw to Hyperborea every winter. Furthermore, the country was forced to recognize its somber ties to Hyperborea because Apollo was an old Greek deity. Envision a stunning paradise where empires abruptly fall apart beneath the ice. Hyperborea ended like this. Hyperborea is known to be a place of perpetual spring. However, rapid pole shifts, as shown by geological evidence, might have quickly turned balmy climates into frigid wastelands. Scientists now acknowledge that the poles have moved in the past, changing the global weather and habitability. This leads us to our question: what if Hyperborea's decline was disastrous rather than gradual? A quick flash freeze that covered cities in ice in a matter of days? Probably. Such an occurrence is suggested by the Siberian mammoths. The reason for this is that they were found to have undigested food in their stomachs. Would the inhabitants of Hyperborea have suffered the same fate? If this is the case, their culture was instantly destroyed rather than merely deteriorating. The precise reason behind Hyperborea's disappearance is unknown to the outside world. Historians, however, have different opinions. There are other potential causes than an unexpected ice apocalypse. We are aware of a deluge that occurred throughout the ancient globe. According to some tales, it appeared as massive earthquakes and fire that rained down from the sky. Plato even linked severe floods to the demise of Atlantis. Was the fate of Hyperborea similar? In other works, some academics attribute the devastation of Hyperborea to solar flares or comet impacts that caused the Earth's climate to become unstable. Ancient customs also coincide. From Native American stories of sky stones causing flooding to the Norse Ragnarok, where the planet is consumed by fire and ice. Any cosmic catastrophe that struck the poles would have destroyed Hyperborea first because it was located at the magnetic crown of Earth. It's possible that their control over Earth's energies was insufficient to protect them from the sky. Was this a divine retribution, or only the harsh outcome of celestial cycles?
Incredible.
Did you see that?
The catch is that the stories do not claim that Hyperborea completely disappeared. They claim that its inhabitants moved south. Stories from Greece to India tell of bright northern masters who introduced spiritual law, astronomy, and agriculture. Archaeology shows that advanced knowledge suddenly appeared all over Eurasia. Furthermore, none of them seem coincidental. They are all too abrupt. So was Hyperborea really dead? Or did it scatter in order to blend in with the emergence of succeeding empires? Post your thoughts or queries in the comments section. Additionally, please subscribe to our channel and like this video if you liked it. Till we cross paths again, keep your thoughts open.